Now, this being the case, there's a couple of things I want to do in the last few minutes I have. One, I want to talk about how essential is belief in the Trinity. And the other is to talk to you about models of illustrations of the Trinity that people have used to try to explain. And maybe if I have time, give you a model that works better for me, but I don't know if it's any better than anyone else's. As far as the essentiality of understanding the Trinity, there are some who would make belief in the Trinity, according to the Nicene Creed, the litmus test of orthodoxy. And anyone who holds any slightly different view, for instance, a person who's a modalist or Jesus only, that person would have to be called a cultist or a heretic by these people's reckoning. And I would have to take issue with that, because there were many Christians who were regarded as orthodox prior to the Nicene Council who had some view other than that which the Nicene Council came up with. It was hotly debated. At one point, the majority of the people on the council disagreed with the Trinitarian formulation and agreed with Arius. Now, I'm glad they turned around and refuted Arius and ended up coming out on the right side of this. But what I'm saying is, before it was settled there were a variety of views in the church. All of them were regarded to be possible to be held by Christians. And therefore, if we could say that one has to hold an exact adherence to the Trinitarian formulation to be orthodox, then that means that we're making it more narrow to be a Christian now than it was before the Nicene Council. And we're doing so on the basis strictly of the authority of that council, which was a human council, making up a human formulation, trying to explain a divine mystery. I would say that the Trinity doctrine is most likely the correct way to synthesize the biblical data into a statement of the nature of God. I do believe that the Trinity doctrine is correct. But I cannot say that any writer of Scripture makes an issue of it. Consider this. If belief in the Trinity and a correct understanding of the Trinity was somehow necessary for salvation, would it not be likely that God would say something about it in the Bible? I mean, why is it that you never have anywhere in the Bible, except in one verse of questionable authenticity, a statement, a formulation of the Trinity doctrine? Why is it that we have to deduce it from scattered fragments here and there and say, well, the best way I can see to put these fragments together and make them all true is to have some kind of a Trinity idea? You know, I mean, if this is such an essential doctrine, why is it that none of the apostles nor Jesus ever taught it, never clarified it, never even enunciated it? It seems to me that a correct understanding of the Trinity is important for the sake of being accurate, and it best, as I say, best synthesizes the whole counsel of God on the subject. But it does not seem as if the synthesis of this material is absolutely necessary for salvation. And therefore, so long as somebody upholds the deity of Christ, which I believe that belief is essential for salvation, I believe the deity of Christ is an essential doctrine, and it is affirmed powerfully in Scripture. As long as someone affirms the deity of Christ, I believe that a person might be at liberty to believe, any one of several different possible formulations of the Trinity doctrine, so long as they're doing their best to get it from the Scripture and not making up something for themselves, and still be in God's family. I mean, if God thought it was important, He should have said so, and He didn't. Therefore, I will not accept, just because the Church has for many centuries now decided that this is the essential point of orthodoxy against all heresy, I cannot accept the authority of the Church on that any more than I do on the subject of infant baptism or on the worship of Mary. I will accept only what the Scripture says on it. What the Scripture says is that we must affirm that Jesus is God. That's a hard thing to do without having some kind of a Trinitarian concept, but some manage it. The Jesus-onlys believe Jesus is God, but they're not Trinitarian. I disagree with their reasoning, but I don't disagree with their salvation. I believe that they can be saved. And in that respect, I take a lighter view than many do of the imposition of a specific model of Trinitarianism upon a person before we allow them to be a brother or in the family of God. I don't believe that Abraham was a Trinitarian, or that David was a Trinitarian, or Moses, but I do believe they were saved. And I'm not even sure whether some of the duller apostles were Trinitarian in the sense of being able to explain this doctrine. Remember, Peter said there's a lot of things Paul wrote that Peter personally found hard to understand. And Paul never even talked about the Trinity doctrine outright. Imagine how hard Peter would find that to understand. But did Peter have to know the doctrine? Apparently not. It never was necessary to formulate a doctrine on this until the 4th century. The church got along fine without such formulations. Maybe it didn't get along fine. I take that back. I shouldn't say that. Because the church did have heresies like Arianism that did not affirm the deity of Jesus.